Okay, welcome back from the last video. I'm going to go through a series of 3 videos to cover what I refer to as the Colson normalization tutorial. It's an example of the normalization process. One that I found that is probably one of the best ways of teaching beginning database students about the normalization process. So here I am back in weekly assignments in Blackboard, week 10, in the lecture folder, down here to the normalization tutorial. I'm going to click on this PDF and it will open up here. Okay. So the 3 normal forms, that's what we're interested here in database design by Fred Colson. I'm just scrolling down through here. I'm going to be scrolling around in here a lot. I'll try to do it slow so I don't give anyone a headache watching this. But here's the table of contents. Okay, here's the introduction. When I read this first paragraph, I knew it was perfect for this course. It says, this is meant to be a very brief tutorial aimed at beginners who want to get a grasp on the normalization process. It is hard to understand the normalization process, like I told you. Matter of fact, the first several times you go through the normalization process, you'll probably feel a little fuzzy at the end. It takes quite a few times before you feel comfortable with it. So if you don't fully understand it after this chapter, that's okay, as long as you at least start to get a grasp of the normalization process. This example puts together, it demonstrates an invoice or an order and gets it to the 3rd normal form. So we'll go through normal form 1, 2, and 3 with this invoice example, or as you'll see, it's more of an order. And this is a pretty common situation in most businesses. They want to track their orders. So a nice example here. This paragraph here, the important note, talks about most database people have an idea what a good table structure is already, so they usually just use that more common sense approach, the rules of 1. But really, like I said before, you need to understand the normalization process. Yeah, here he says the first 3 normal forms are common sense. When you first sit down to design a database, you pretty much have a good structure in mind, but it never hurts to put that design up against these first 3 normal forms just to make sure you have a good understanding of them. Let's scroll down a little bit here. Colson says memorize the first 3 normal forms. Now, we don't like to memorize a lot of things, but I wouldn't think it'd be a bad idea to remember these first 3 normal forms. They're just 3 short sentences. First normal form, no repeating groups. We know that. Second, no partial dependencies on a concatenated key. And third, no dependencies on a non-key field. Okay, so try to get those memorized. And let's start by looking at the example. Here's a stack of invoices, or you can think of, this is the bill that goes to the customer for a certain order. This person, here's the customer information on the invoice. Some invoice information here. Here's the customer number, and here's the different items that this person is ordering. And you got some dollar amounts here with a total. So pretty straightforward order here, or an invoice. Scroll down a little bit more. And they're keeping track of this in a spreadsheet. That's just, a lot of times that's how people start storing information, is just in a spreadsheet. A lot of people know spreadsheets, so they just gravitate to that. You can see they keep all the information about the order here. And here's the second order. But it starts getting hard once you get, with 2 orders here, it's not so bad, but say you have 2,000 or 20,000 orders, your spreadsheet would become a little too big, and it would be hard to make queries or answer questions about that data in a spreadsheet format. So now we're going to start the normalization process of this data. The first normal form here says no repeating groups. And if we look at that spreadsheet, the part of the spreadsheet they're talking about here is right in this area here. See, each order or invoice has multiple items and item descriptions and quantities and price and such. That's a repeating group, because you can't put all these values in one field in one record. You know, there's multiple values here for this field. So that's one signal that you have a repeating group if you see data like this. Another one would be that we had last chapters if you start numbering your fields in your table. So for instance, if he, instead of listing them down like this, if he listed them across and had item ID 1, then item description 1, item quantity 1, item price 1, then he went item price or item ID 2, and then item ID 3, and so forth, that would be a repeating group also. And that's always bad. You don't want repeating groups because that breaks the first normal form. So what do we do to get rid of those? Keep going down through here. Here's how he fixed it. He just now has, now instead of just having one row or one record for this each invoice, he actually has 3. So we got a lot of duplicate data here. And that we know that's not good either. We don't want duplicate data, because wonder if this customer changed their address, so we'd have to come in and change it several different times here. So this does in effect meet first normal form because we don't have repeating groups anymore. But we got this other problem with duplicate data here. And we'll take care of that later. But for now, you know, this is okay. Except for now each row doesn't have a unique primary key value. So, you know, it used to be the invoice number was unique for each invoice, but now since it's repeated here, we would have to concatenate the invoice number with the item ID number. And that's what they're showing here in this next look at the data. So now they have a concatenated primary key. It says when a value is made up of 2 or more columns or fields, it's referred to as a concatenated primary key. Now this does satisfy the first normal form, but like we said, we got other problems now with duplicate data, but we never stop at first normal form. Here's what our entity is looking like at this point. We're keeping track of, you know, they started saying invoice, but really they're referring to an order. So we got an order entity with all this information in here, and then a concatenated primary key. So this fulfills the first normal form, this design right here. It says what's next? Well, as you guessed, it's the second normal form. That'll be in my next video.